Welcome to the Painting Insights podcast. We have been working on something in the background.
That's right. We've actually started a Patreon channel. For the last couple of months, we've had previous guests revisit the channel to give us additional content, everything from studio tours, sketchbook tours, talking us through the process of paintings and all kinds of additional treats, which you're exclusively going to see as a patron who supports the channel.
So by supporting us on Patreon, you help the channel keep going. There's a lot of work put into this, from the video editing to the sourcing of guests. So you really help us find those guests and to put the content out.
And we have lots of content planned for the near future. So the links for that will be in the description of this video and in the description on the podcast channels. And otherwise, you can go on to Patreon and type in Painting Insights Podcast and support us that way. Thanks very much. Enjoy the video. So would you mind introducing yourself for the audience, please?
Yes, my name is Valeria Duca. I am a painter. I've been painting for almost 20 years since I was a child. I still consider, I'm 29 now. So I started when I was 9, 10. I was born in Moldova. And so I'm Moldovan. But I left when I was 17. I studied in the UK. I studied art history as well. And now I live in Oslo and I paint. Now I'm in my studio that is actually given to me by the gallery I work with, Gallery Renshaw. So I feel very comfortable and very right now because it's the studio that I am every day in. So it's a comfortable space. And I look forward to our conversation. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Me too. And so the thing which pops out at me immediately is that the gallery gave you a studio space. That's unusual. I've never heard of that before. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Yeah, it's really amazing. Gallery Ramfjord in Oslo. How did that happen? Can you even ask me?
Please.
No, I think they have been very nice with artists and like building a community in the way that before, for example, they would do these art residencies where for a month the artists would just take over the entire gallery to use it as their own studio space. So like for a month, the gallery would be transformed into an art studio with like each painter having their own little space. And that kind of that's probably one of the most amazing moments that I've had in the gallery, like the opportunity to be with artists from different countries. There were people from the US, from like Georgia, the Middle East, not like East Europe, not not the US, so like from all over the world. Now just because we work so closely, it just kind of coincided with them extending their space and having like a studio available that I've been using for the last 2 years now. So I hope I get to use it more. But no, it's been like really nice to be here also because, it's like I kind of need that a little bit of structure. So like the fact that people are there working every day and I can go there, say hi, make my coffee, have a little chat. It gives me like a bit of grounding in the real world because you can go a bit all over the place if you spend so much time in isolation. Like artists do. So it's very, very nice. Yeah.
It sounds like the absolute dream for any artist to have a studio for a couple of years so far, and hopefully longer for you, where you have this community of artists. It's just the absolute best case scenario, and I can't even imagine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, now it's been because it hasn't been a residency really now. So like, there's been periods when other artists have stopped by. yeah, no, you're right. It's amazing. Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't really a question. I'm just in shock at how
Yeah.
amazing that sounds. I'm so happy for you because it sounds
Yeah.
well deserved as well. Because am I right in thinking you were the youngest um, exhibitor in the Venice Biennale? Is that correct?
Yeah, that happened. I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. That was in 2011. I think it
So you were
was a long time
15?
ago. I was I was 15. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So how did that happen? Because I can't imagine that either.
Yeah. Well, you see, like I kind of see my career split in like two big parts in my life, really. And when I was a child, I started. So that's kind of like the turning point would be like reaching adulthood, because as a child, I just lost myself in painting, and then it was my father who got. I think he was just so fascinated at the beginning. And even him, I remember telling me when he grew up that he was always fascinated about people drawing. Like he couldn't, it's almost like his brain would explode, like he couldn't understand how they do that. So he kind of became fascinated with me and started um, organizing exhibitions for me. So I had my first exhibition very young. And the moment I sold my first painting, then at the beginning, it was just like fascination. And then, like the moment I sold my first painting, then he understood that this can actually be sustainable. So he would like do everything to do with organizing, with like everything a curator, from what a curator would do to what like logistics person would do to events organizing absolutely everything. And of course, there was like so much of him in that period of my life. And I think we had like a breaking point when I got a scholarship and I went to study in the UK. Because it was the time when I was becoming an adult, and I was understanding that. So I wanted to have more. Um, mm, yeah, I started having. I always had a lot of opinions about everything. So so I just needed the space to be myself, right? Which meant being standing on my own, and that didn't happen naturally, but they had to like happen a break for me to be able to do that. So then like this break also in our relationship, but also like I took a time off because at a certain point I wasn't very sure whether it was me who wanted to paint or it was just um, so I took some time. That's when I did my high school honor scholarship in the UK, and then I studied art history at St Andrews in Scotland. And that was kind of my time of understanding or not whether I want to be a painter. And the 4 years of studying art history at St Andrews really kind of nailed it down for me that I'm not going to go into academia and that I want to give this a try, like with my own. On my own, yeah, with my own forces. Yeah, that's
Wow.
pretty much like that's how a short summary.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it makes me wonder though, since
Mm.
you announced or kind of, established your independence at that point, have you reconciled with your dad? Are you still close with him?
Not yet because it's taken me so long, you know. I mean, it's taken me so long. I've just been recently home. I don't really know. It's very hard because most of our relationship was about art, right? So like most of our bonding was that, um, and me leaving home was also like physically I'm not there, right? So and then everything to do with art and like my ideas and thoughts, I don't necessarily share them with him. like I don't. So have I reconciled? I don't know if there was something to reconcile. It's just that I took that decision, and I don't know. Like it's for me, it seems like a very obvious decision. And like when you use the word reconcile, I feel like there's something that has to um, um,
Be fixed or something, which
yeah, exactly. And I just think of it as a natural progression of life, you know?
I see. I may have misunderstood because I mean, I assume he still is massively proud and supportive of what
Yeah.
you've done because you've achieved so much and your abilities have developed so vastly. I mean, I've been enjoying scrolling through your Instagram to see, you know, the roots of where you developed, and it's leaps and bounds to see how you've developed your style, and it's become almost more dreamlike and just, you know, this beautiful energy and motion swirling through the paintings now. When was it that you developed this kind of energy and this kind of activity on the surface from the more classical static painting that seems to be frozen?
Really, like, I mean, you know, conceptually one understands it, that like, um, I think I got to a certain point, maybe during the pandemic, when I realized that a lot of my paintings were driven by the idea behind it. So at a certain point, they already looked like almost looked like illustrations, because and it was like I could see it in the process, because I would like my brain wanted to say something, and then I would make it visually in my head, and then I would stage it and photograph it. And like from the moment that it was photographed, even if you work with like 100 or 200 photos, pretty much 95% of the creative process is finished, because it would like so tightly express the idea that I wanted to say that the painting process itself was more like a chore, right? And I really enjoyed that type of working. And I think it works brilliantly when you have very clear messages. So when you're communicating something rather than like being open and exploring. And just really what happened is that I, I didn't feel like there were many more things that I had to say. So I kind of like almost emptied uh, everything I had, and then it was natural for me um, to find something else of interest, um, and to start a period of like being open, and to start a period where like the process itself is exciting, um, like the process of painting in itself, rather than like what these paintings say. Or so that's been like the last 3 years, and it's every year is like a different layer of yeah. I feel like it uncovers a different layer. I mean, I could talk so much about it, because it's. I mean, I remember it started with some older painters here in the gallery, like Gabriel Schmitz and Peter Sutton, who they were. They were just like, especially Peter. He was like, "You have to learn to be a bad painter, Valeria. Like you just like you're too tight. You're too scared of making mistakes. This is too serious. You're approaching it." And then I think about it looking back. I think I was approaching it as a performance, you know, where everything is put together so that it looks good on the exhibition day opens. And they kind of taught me the need to approach the painting with more playfulness, with more relaxation. But in order to be relaxed, you can't be scared to make mistakes. You know, it has to be a game. It has to be like children playing. You know, it has to be creative and explorative, and really that at the core is admitting that you can make mistakes and you won't always be an amazing painter. You know, it's not about that. So that's pretty much kind of like the mental work. Yeah.
Well, that's a really interesting idea as well, is that at what point, and this may seem like a strange question, I'm not sure, but at what point is it playful? Is it the brush strokes? Is it the color palette? Or where is it that you kind of introduce experimentation and playfulness? At what point is that expressed in your practice?
Like from the moment I start painting, right? I don't look at the like I kind of need for myself to solve in a way the composition, more or less. But so many things change. So from the moment I put paint on the canvas, I am not certain of how it will end. So because I don't have a clear image, let's say 100% clear image of how this will look, then my brain has a little door, a little bit open to actually see what happens in front of me. And some fragments happen by chance and they turn out a lot more beautiful or as a point of attention, other than I have intended it in the beginning. And because that little door in my head is open, I actually notice it, right? I notice it happening, and then I make a decision to leave it or take it out, right? So if a wonderful moment happens, and I'm like, wow, this actually happened, then I think, okay, but let's go back to what I intended to paint. Does this take away from my main intention? Or why does this fragment work so well? Why did I get so interested in it? Do I actually want to say this? So it's, you see what I mean? Because before I knew with a lot of certainty what the painting will look out like before I started painting. And I've learned a lot with that, but I think there's not so much life in them. Like they're quite stiff. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. That's really interesting because it's keeping the creative moments fluid, it sounds like, so that you can then inject all types of experimentation and creativity into every stage of it. That's fantastic. And I was wondering as well, is that with these artists, the older artists, giving you this advice to loosen up and play a bit more, is that something you still invite? Do you invite that outside lens to look at your work, or have you got that in yourself now where you are constantly criticizing your own work to make sure that you're certain that you're not stagnating in any way? Because I think that aside from practice, the ability to critically analyze your own work is really vital for a lot of artists.
I think I've changed my opinion towards criticism as well, in the sense that I think that has a place to say in like in school when you learn drawing, when you learn perspective, anatomy, but like criticizing an adult artist is really implying that there is a way to do art, right? And I don't think that there is. I think that like the way like it's the same as you would say that there is a way to exist or that there is a way to use words. Like I think of visual images as communication, right? So you may not like a message, or you may not think that it's written grammatically correct, or so I think, but to kind of, when we talk about art, very often we like, is it a good painter? Is it a bad painter? You know? And I don't think that applies, because it's like with humans in conversation. It's like you may agree with their ideas, you may mislike the way that if they use swear words, or you like, but it's just who they are and like what they communicate. And I think that it's very important, not so much like criticism, but like having people around who like see you, what you're trying to do, what you're struggling with, or like what you're trying to say, or like even if you're not trying to say anything, but you're like very interested in a specific thing, and you don't notice in yourself that this particular thing you're more curious about than other things. So like having someone next to you who's like, oh, you've painted this, like this motive reappears in your paintings like 10 times more than the others. Like, why do you think that is? You know? So kind of like that kind of conversation really helps to understand yourself, understand what you're trying to say, in which parts the way you're trying to show things doesn't really work. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
It does, yeah. I mean, that's what I was imagining, is more supportive critique than negative, because I always, with friends of mine who paint, I try to reinforce the aspects of their painting which I enjoy, especially if it's something I don't see as often from them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, I love the way you've done this in this painting, and I know it may not be finished, but you've really got something that's interesting happening there. And just to try and show that I have notice something which is maybe different from what they normally do. And I feel as though sometimes as artists, you don't always know, you're not always aware of what you're doing. Just like with language, if someone were to say, you swear a lot more than I do, you would, if you did swear a lot more, you may not be aware of it. And just someone that says that can make you think, yeah, is that a problem? Say, it's not a problem. I'm just saying that it's, part of your common parlance, and it's interesting. And that can maybe offer introspection in a healthy way. So I was wondering if that's something which, since those artists contributed in that significant way for your development, if that's something which you embrace, or whether you are still reinforcing the independence of because you're obviously confident in what you're doing, which is wonderful. And I don't see enough of it in artists because a lot of artists aren't as confident as they need to be, I think. And it seems very healthy to see that in you. So I'm just wondering if it's a balance, or if it's something which you kind of step back at times, and then other times you're steadfast in your direction.
I think it's that's a very good question. So I'm not always open to it's like now I've learned this year to think of art as something that happens, right? And I take away a little bit the responsibility, because I've stepped back in controlling everything. So because I don't control anything, there's a higher degree of things that just happen, you know? And usually I'm very eager to hear other people's opinions when I am myself insecure, right? So if I lose confidence or have a bad period of few months, then it's very easy to like look around and seek reassurance. but the more I paint, the more I understand that although those things are like very, very useful, it's very nice to get us at the stage in painting where you don't depend on those things. Because really, like, I mean, people do like every artist approaches things their own way, and you may find like a difficulty in a painting in expressing something or highlighting an idea. So you can ask, for example, look, I have this intention. I'm trying to get this message or make the painting about this part, and I feel like the movement from there highlights it, but then it breaks down. Like, I don't know how to fix it. Can you like tell me? So like that's like so nice. It's amazing, right? But when you like have the approach of like looking around to ask the other people, am I a good enough painter? Like, do you think like what can I work on? Or like to seek this like validation? I mean, that's just like a wrong approach because I don't believe any longer that there is one way to be a good painter. So you're just looking around to, yeah. So you see, it's like such different ways that you can ask the people around you for help. And I think really what distinguishes them is the intention, like your own intention. Do you as an artist have something to say? And then you're just stumbling and aren't really sure how to say that correctly? Or are you just very concerned with being a good artist? Because that's, I feel like that's a road to hell. If you're concerned with being a good artist, you see yourself from the outside all the time. You're not connecting to what you're doing. You're performing. Yeah, you're like pretending to, and it's very easy to do that as a painter. Like, there's so many, and I've done that myself so many times when I just like worked so hard for weeks to piece together a composition and like burnt out because it had to be very good, because I had to be a good artist and, paint at the millimeter to millimeter. But I think that's just stupid, to be honest, because you're like building this painting or this castle outside yourself to say that you're a good painter. You're not actually painting. You're not reacting to what's in front of you. You're just like building a castle that is empty inside. Yeah, like a facade.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like it's based on the intention. Yeah.
Well, it sounds as though that's, the distinction between building your skills and ability and then to the point where you start to speak as an individual who, as you said, communicates through art, something which you see, feel, and believe in, which is really important. But this all comes from your fundamental knowledge that you've earned as well. And I've seen that you are very skilled at drawing because I've looked back and you do beautiful drawings as well. Is it something which do you still have sketchbooks that are active, or do you go straight on something? You do, yeah?
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I do. Yeah.
Please, tell us.
No, I think that's a tricky, point because you're right. Building those skills is. But I think that we also very much, and I think every artist should have like basic skills, And I think that period where you build skills, it's very difficult. Because learn technique, yeah, you can say that it's you're doing it right or wrong, But I think that what really helped me is keeping those processes really separated. And it's only that we have like a preconceived idea of what art should be, but we are so concerned with building skill. Like I'm thinking in a certain way, right? In the way that you understand form, you understand the light and shadow. Um, Maybe that won't even be needed, in the future with the. But and I'm seeing that also because a lot of skill I've learned from things completely unrelated to art. Like for example, I have to show you this.
Please, yeah.
Like this thing. For the last 2 years, we've been redecorating the apartment we live in, and this is I don't know what it's called in English, used for applying a type of like thicker medium to the walls. It's
Yeah,
used in
I think I'd call it a
construction.
scraper. I don't know. It looks like a paint scraper of some kind, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's not an artist's tool. It's a
Yeah.
construction worker's tool for
Yeah.
when they build the walls,
For
right?
plastering, it looks like a plastering tool.
It's a
Yeah.
plastering tool,
Yeah.
and I only and this I use every day because it's a tool I learned from something else. But it also makes marks, and it makes interesting marks, and then I can just apply it to paint. So I think that, like, I don't know, I'm just thinking now as um, I like there's so many tools that one can learn. It doesn't have to be in the like traditional sense. Um, yeah, anything that leaves a mark, really.
Mm.
It's, yeah.
But that's on the canvas. So back to sketchbooks, if I may. Is
Yes, sir.
your No, it's okay. I was just wondering, is your sketchbook practice, do you kind of, I'm wondering, the point of inspiration, developing concepts in a sketchbook, thumbnails. Is this kind of a process that you've built, or is it sometimes more spontaneous? Like, what steps do you take to create a piece?
Um, so I just sketch, right? So it's different parts. So most of the time I try just to sketch um, anything that I see, the things around me in my home, my husband, my cats. When I'm on the bus, I sketch people. Um, I also made this like super cheap opportunity both for me and for other people to book a portrait session in my studio. And that's like it costs 40 euros for 40 minutes, and it's people just walk in and 40 minutes of like a portrait drawing. And for me, that's like amazing practice. I regard that as a practice, and it's just because for the sake of drawing, nothing else. And then I also, if I have an exhibition with a very clear idea, like right now, I returned to some paintings, some like material I documented in Moldova when the um, Russia's invasion of Ukraine happened, and that's a heavy subject. It's a very like limited subject. There's a lot to explore, but it's very like clear what the like my intention with it and what the paintings are about. Um, and that has been, like a 3-year process because it's such a heavy subject. And the first year I was just crying. I couldn't even like draw it. Now it's 3 years later, and I still go back to all those images. I make sketches, like I can show you, like
Oh,
this.
beautiful. Wow.
Um, but again, like from the sketches that I make, like I make a lot of sketches that are in the sketchbook, and then
I love
but
it.
those two that I showed you are like I made them they're in the sketchbook, and then I don't think about them, and then I come to the studio and I open the sketchbook, and usually like maybe 2 out of 10 I react to when I'm in the studio. Um, so like this one, I mean, it's very sweet, the girl. So it's very nice. It's something, but it's not as effective as a composition overall. So I'm not, yeah. Like, so like kind of instead of like thinking very much about it, like I make all the sketches and then I have a separate space because that usually I do at home between dinner and going to bed. If I don't have anything social, I usually just sketch, and then I don't sit and look at it and kind of like ruminate and think like try to approach it very rationally and like maybe this like that or and maybe like no, I just do a lot, do whatever seems to be interesting that day. And then 2 days later or a week later, when I'm in the studio, I just open the sketchbook and it's like it's a 5 second decision, you know, because your brain, uh, it or like not even your brain doesn't understand you instinctually like one sketch better than the other mine. So then I like it's like this. Um, so I think like I understand rationally how this process works, but like it's just I feel like I've built it for myself through the years, and I'm still working with it, so that I have this space to make decisions instinctually. Yeah, that's
Yeah, no, that's wonderful because it makes sense that you create the sketches, then just react to them, and then you can see the composition more clearly and what speaks to you as far as the message, which is completely rational to me as an actual the best way to remove yourself from the sketch for a time period and then revisit it. That's fantastic. I'm also wondering how important is abstraction to your work? Because obviously you're not an abstract painter, but you must deal a lot in abstraction in your work. So how do you reconcile that, or how do you feel about that? How does that work for you?
I think for a long time I tried to mimic abstraction. So again, like a lot of the previous paintings that are like broken down realism, I would the creative process would happen in Photoshop, and then once like I like the composition and I like what if you work on a computer, you see it very small, so you're able to actually see it from 10 meters, you know, distance. If it's a large painting. And then I would, when I would start painting, I would just like labor through it, you know. But lately, I'm just because I'm more like open. I think a lot of abstraction just happens organically. Um, and I'm trying to find the best way to. Your question was like, how do I think about abstraction, or?
Yeah, and how does it work for you? Because you must utilize abstraction, even though you work figuratively. You must understand it
Yeah.
and use it for your work.
I think in a way abstraction like happens naturally when you have a clarity of like what is important to the painting. Because my father-in-law taught me this, who was a photojournalist his entire life, and it's about the way our vision works. And if you think about how the brain receives visual information, I never actually spent that much time thinking about it, but my go-to, because I work with images, my go-to kind of thought would be that, oh, we just like see it almost like a camera. We see like picture and then picture and picture. But this is not the way our brain receives information. If I'm in this room and I look exactly at this cup, my brain sees this little part in complete sharpness, and everything else around is blurred. And in order to, if I intend to take the scissors, then I look at the scissors and my brain sees this part in complete sharpness and everything else is blurred. So I think like the blurriness of the surrounding, it comes natural when you know what you're looking at, when you know what you want to show in a painting. And it's inbuilt in us because you cannot see everything in sharpness. It's not biologically, it's impossible. We don't have that type of vision. So I think abstraction happens as a consequence of actually putting certain things in sharpness or in focus. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that does make a lot of sense. And I always wonder, because I'm a fan of a chap called James Gurney. He's an American painter who does some plein air work and posts them online for people to see how he does it. And he'll talk, he's an older artist, not old, but he's older. And he will explain his thought process. And he'll say things like, people say that being an artist is learning to see. He said, but being a true artist is learning to see through what you see and then not painting the details, painting the layers and building them up, seeing the abstract shapes, and then developing all of the textures and the tonal values from this ground layer. Being able to see through that is truly the skill which people develop over time, I suppose, and evolve. And that's part of what the abstract or the abstraction of reality, I think, offers us as far as accuracy as well, is to relate abstract shapes to each other. How they relate in space can sometimes offer more accurate measurements than we would have if we are just going by what our brain is assuming about what our vision is taking in. Is there anything which you've gleaned over the years as far as, you know, any kind of things which you thought, I once painted a certain way, but now I've learned this works better? For example, I mean, this is an obvious one, but for a quick example would be to look through your eyelashes, to squint, reduces everything down to the basic tonal shapes and removes a lot of the detail. Things like that are a basic tip that you can give to people. But is there things which you've learned where you think this has really been a fundamental or foundational knowledge that I've learned in your practice personally?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, I don't think technically, because I think, like, I've seen so many people that squint their eyes and still can't see, or like people who like use mirrors, but to see the symmetry of the face, but it still looks wrong in retrospect. So it's so interesting. I'm really trying not to exactly like technically, not to attach myself to that, to like some technical tools. And no, I think like kind of in this part of what we were talking about, I actually I have written on my wall, and I think I wrote it like a year ago, that you cannot make a detail disappear if you keep focusing on it. And I think that works for life. It works for painting. It works for everything. And I kind of tried that technically, because sometimes I would get paintings and like the way the hand fell or something would really annoy me, and it would annoy me so much, and I would like repaint it like 7 times, you know, and it was so stupid because really what I was trying to do is make this hand not important, but I would spend so much time focusing on it, right? So I kind of love that saying because it applies to painting practically, and I felt it. If I come to the studio every single day for a week and all I look at is the hand, and my goal is to like not make that hand that important, then how can it not be important if I give it so much time, you know? So it works practically, and then it also works like as human beings in human relationships. That if you focus on the things you like about people or the things that are good about them, they just grow, you know? Yeah, so I just really love that approach, and it's something I've discovered like recently. Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of truth in it, and yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely, and it's quite profound actually when it relates to not only a painting, but as you said, people in your life. That's really important. That's very nice. Yeah, I like that a lot. Because I was wondering if you'd see, I'm just on a very surface level technical tips, but I wondered whether your development of your understanding of color, because I can see your color palette developing as well throughout your timeline on your Instagram. So I didn't know if there was a something that you kind of understood there about, I don't know, the kind of tertiary scale and where to actually introduce more vibrant colors and where to keep them kind of softer and more muted. That always fascinates me, and I love when people can wield their color palette really powerfully, and you've really done that beautifully, I think, in your work. So that's something which, I mean, is there anything which you can share about your understanding there that you've learned?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm like, I remember myself like 4 years ago, being very sad that all my paintings are very dramatic. And I was looking at Nicolas Uribe's paintings, and I really like him as an artist and as a human. Yeah. And they had so much softness. And yeah, and I remember very clearly, like, um, setting it for myself as a goal that I would like to achieve. But I'm not sure how did that happen exactly.
Really?
Because, yeah, I'm not. I think it's. I'm just looking now at my studio wall as well because it's quite pastel colors and really nice. I think there's something to do with like real life as well, because usually when we take photos or work with cameras, we want there to be, or the way I used to work before, I used dramatic lighting. Even if I use the camera on a like normal day, it will either enhance the colors or enhance the contrast. So I don't know if I have an Android, so whenever I take my phone out, there's a little glitch. So when I open the camera app, within the first 2 seconds, it's like normal settings, and then I can see it changes to the higher contrast. And very often, like I go back and forth and close the app and open it again just to get it before the contrast. That's one thing. And I think I don't know, I think it's something to do with painting from life because, or like making sketches from life or just spending more time just looking like at people. So it's a lot more. You see, like before, if I had an idea about how paintings would have to be, what I wanted to say, it happened in my head. I wasn't actually looking around. I had this message, and then not from like looking of what is around me, but just because I had some anger or some frustration that I needed to get out. So the message started here, and then I would use everything around me like plastiline to make this message come through. And so and then I would paint. So really, like, the process was started here. But in the last few years, I think because I haven't had that such strong opinions, and actually I've been happier. You know, I had so much depression before, and all this stuff had to get out. But I've actually been much happier. So I was actually a bit sad that I was so happy, you know, because I wouldn't have these very clear, strong ideas that I wanted to represent. So that went away. But what came was that I could have moments, a lot of moments in my day-to-day life, or of just like seeing something and being like, wow, and just like sitting for 10 seconds just to look at it, you know? And and that's it's something about not being in your head, you know, like, and kind of walking through life like this. But just seeing the colors around you, like, and I do that so much now. Like, if I get out in the afternoon and there's this moment or very early morning, there's this moment when the houses are lighter than the sky. And oh my God, when that happens, I'm like, whew, I can feel you know, release of tension in my muscle. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And I can just sit and look at it, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm no longer in my head trying to say something, or not that that's bad, but when I catch myself in moments like this, I'm just like, wow. And so, or sometimes when people talk, and this happens to me constantly, and the color in my studio is a little bit pinkish, very similar to, like, it's a little bit pinkish, and but it's like a neutral, it's a gray, it's like a warm, and so it matches a lot of people's clothes or skin tones or blah, blah, blah. And whenever I talk to a person and their sweater disappears in the background, or with my husband at home, if he's like half naked and he's talking to me, but half of his body is almost invisible because it disappears in the color of the background, then it's so beautiful. So I'm like, visually, yeah, I get so much joy from just seeing that. So I think to answer your question, is like, maybe to be open to look around, because these colors are in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah. Well, I've experienced things like that as well because I've done portrait modeling. So I've sat for people to draw and paint me as a model. And because I try to stare and stay still and I stare at a spot, I don't know if you've ever done that, where you kind of fix your gaze on something, and the kind of psychedelic thing that happens in your brain is strange. And I never knew it would happen, where your brain's almost saying, look away, look away, look away. And if you don't look away, the room just changes, things pulse, and then they disappear, and it's amazing. And it's similar to when you are fixed gaze on someone or something. And as you said, part of it just blends in with the background. And then it's only their eyes or the conversation or something very particular which is still there. And it's just a lovely point of focus. So I can completely relate to how mesmerizing that is. But because I mentioned color, I don't know if you know this, but on the podcast, we do make a bit of a feature of asking artists if you have a set palette. And if you do, could you take us through which colors you use? You don't have a set palette. That's interesting.
Well, there's, so like the Old Holland for blues, I mostly just use the Old Holland blue, and for reds, I mostly use alizarin crimson. And those are like two constants. I don't use that much, like cadmium red or yeah. But those two are probably like the only constant. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, so I normally have like I haven't figured out blacks yet, so I don't really know like the difference between. I haven't felt it myself, the difference between like lamp black and
Mars.
uh, Mars black. So
Hmm.
I haven't explored it because all my blacks were just black. You know, it didn't matter that much. For blues, I do like Old Holland blue because it's quite angry. It's quite an angry blue, and it's I don't like cobalt so much. It's I really don't. I don't know why. It's I don't like it. And yeah, and I usually have mm, burnt amber. I have burnt sienna. Those two I definitely have. And then like with the yellow, the ochre and the yellow and the red, I like mix around. White is always titanium, but I actually tried it. I tried zinc several. Like I remember being a child, and you know, people would tell me that titanium is stronger. So you would just like buy it from the shop and do like you heard. But I think about 4 or 5 years ago, I needed to buy some white, and there was no titanium white in the shop I went to, so I just bought zinc, and I went crazy. You know, it's like it's just water. It's like it's so like I don't buy zinc.
Yeah.
Buy. Yeah, there's a lot more colors to explore. Like I would be curious to find out more about like reds and yellows.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but I mix
And
them around. Yeah.
do you mix up the brand, or do you have a particular brand that you enjoy?
I love Old Holland. It's incredible.
Sorry, you did
So
mention Old Holland. Yeah, sorry, you did mention. Yeah.
I love Old Holland, but it's insanely expensive. So I tried to stick to it, and but sometimes, especially the colors that I'm not particular about, I can, you know, mix it with another brand,
Hmm.
but quite rarely. Yeah.
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 That's interesting. Well, yeah, that's it's interesting to know what is and what isn't important. And is there a reason why have you tried cadmium red and it was just too warm or too orange for you, and you just prefer a cooler red?
I don't know. I feel like I like when if I have like I feel like there's so much I can do with Alpha and Crimson. So if I actually want it to be warm, I just mix it with the cad yellow, and then you get like a warmer red. So I feel like it's more practical color.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not so sure. Like, but it comes and goes in periods, I think. I think red is also quite intense. Um, so at times I actually like I get tired, you know, if I work on paintings that are very, um, I'm trying to think why. No, I can't find any reason. And I don't have anything. It might be a pink color.
Yeah.
Just didn't get the time to uh, really get attached to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
No, that makes.
understand its like nuances. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing which I always like to talk to artists about is their experience with galleries. Now, obviously, we've already covered that you're in this dream experience with a gallery, but how have you found your earlier experiences with galleries? Has it always been pleasant and optimistic? Have you had any kind of difficulties with galleries, or has it always been pretty smooth sailing? What's it been like for you?
Mm. Um, I don't, I don't know. I like the gallery I work with in the UK. It's they're like very nice as well. Panther and Hall, they've been so amazing, and I've actually convinced them like 2 years ago to do to change a like scheduled solo show for a charity auction, which for me was mind blowing. That the gallery that has been commercial for like over 20 years would agree to do that. That's really wonderful. I don't think I've been the easiest person to work with either. So like honestly, I think I'm like even coming in this gallery at times I've been very angry and expecting a lot, you know. So I think um, I think it just takes time to understand humans and like try to empathize and understand where they come from. With the gallery I'm in Oslo, for me, it's been like really amazing to get to see, having my studio right next door to the gallery, get to see how much they work on a daily basis. So like, you know, when you're a painter and you spend a whole year or months just um, thinking about your ideas, like looking at the colors, kind of delving deep in that very um, narrow field that becomes a whole universe for you. So and then when you spend all that time just thinking about the paintings and you kind of step into practical life, which is shipping, framing, talking to people, uh, mailing lists. So, like it's so many uh, factually facts and practical things and statistics, and galleries have to pay a rent for the studio and offer jobs for their employees, and like there's so much like actual practical risk that involves the jobs of other people. And I think that in general those two are difficult to mix together, like anything that comes from I like yeah, from being an artist with like practical things of living uh, are difficult to put together, and it just it's that difficulty is so much more enhanced in the relationship between like artists and galleries. It's like it's brought to a climax, you know. It's like so. Yeah, so I think it's important to have conversations and um, me, I think in the last year I've learned um, to like see other people more, to empathize more, but it's a process. I'm not amazing. I can get, yeah, very sad from just one comment that doesn't mean anything. If I'm in a vulnerable day, and that's, you know, it can happen. So I don't know, it's just learning. It's like, I don't think it's different than with other humans. It's not like I have perfect relationships with everyone else around. I think relationships are always difficult and take time just because there's like so much to be said and so much to be lived together and so much to understand. And everyone has their own goals and emotions and what they want to achieve. So, yeah.
Well, what's that quote on your wall? What does it say again? Something about the detail and you focus on the detail.
Yeah, you cannot make a detail disappear if you keep focusing on it. Yeah.
So that seems like a good kind of mantra to keep repeating, to keep that positivity and love kind of rotating and make sure it's reinforced. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's great. I'm going to remember that. I think I'm going to pass that on to other people because it's a wonderful expression. Really good.
I'm glad.
The other thing I wanted to ask is that how many galleries are you showing in currently, and which galleries are they? Because if people wanted to see your work in person, where is it they could go to see it?
So right now I actually have a solo show with Gallery Rampjord in Oslo. This is the gallery that represents me primarily. And then I also work with the Panther and Hall Gallery in London, which is the gallery that represents me in London. And I think I had some, yeah, I think those are the two main ones. I now and then do pop-up shows in like other places and such, but that equals to maybe like 10% of the rest of the work. So it's a lot. It's a lot through these two galleries. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it looks like beautiful work behind you, and I'm excited to see what you create next. Where is it online you'd like any of our listeners or viewers to go to see and support your work?
I think Instagram is so nice. Valeria Duca on Instagram. I think that's the place I'm most active. And yeah, although there was this app called Cara that was meant to take over and it didn't, well, we're still stuck to Instagram.
Yeah.
So, I guess until a better platform comes along, it's Instagram. Yes, no TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. And I'm very happy about it, actually.
Me too. I'm not on TikTok either.
It's so good. Yes.
But I will direct people as well to your website because I had a brief look at it and it does look lovely. So images of those will be on the screen. Links will be in the description of the video and the audio platform for the galleries and your social media. But you've been incredibly generous with your time. It's been so nice talking to you. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. It's been really, really lovely.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode. If you can support the podcast by leaving a like or a comment down below, that would really be great. But what we'd really like is if you're able to leave a review on the podcast channels, wherever you listen to it or download it, because that helps us get spread around the internet so that more people have access to us and able to see what we're making.
Also, follow us on Instagram, and we'd really appreciate it if you like and engage with our posts. Help get the podcast better known. Thanks for listening.